Today's main topic is perspective. Consider the two distinct meanings of I see, one referring to physical vision and the other to understanding. Though connected, these meanings serve different purposes. When we physically see something, it's different when we say, I see what you're talking about. This common phrase expresses comprehension, not visual perception. Let me clarify these two aspects for a second. The first involves physical objects and measurable space. We'll explore linear perspective and optics, concepts grounded in tangible, measurable, objective realities. The second meaning of I see refer to perspective, a point of view, our personal outlook or attitude toward how something exists. This background helps us contrast two key ideas: the physical act of seeing measurable things versus having a point of view. While points of view exist in the realm of ideas and interpretation, they differ from physical reality, much like the concrete earth differs from the ever-changing world of viewpoints and perspectives. In this lecture, we'll explore 30,000 years of art history and anthropology. Our focus will be on the creative process itself, rather than delving into technical details like, for example, how to mix paint. We'll examine fundamental approaches, understanding how artists see and interpret their world during the act of creation. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, while humans have been here for only about 2.5 million years. During the Old Stone Age, Paleolithic period, about 2.6 million to 10,000 BC, humans experienced what is called the cognitive revolution, when they began creating and making things. The Venus of Willendorf is one of the first known human-made objects. It's not just a stone, but one that someone deliberately carved into a figure. Although it has nothing to do with Venus from Greek mythology, it was given the name because of its purpose was, unknown. The figure was discovered during an archaeological dig in Austria. It's quite small, only about 11 centimeters tall, about the width of a piece of paper. Many theories exist about its purpose. Was it a tool, a decorative object? The creator likely didn't even have a concept of what art was at that time. One of the significant developments during the Old Stone Age was storytelling. Stories are among the few human traditions that continue to this day, our ability to tell, to show, to document stories. Communication was entirely oral then, so we can only assume this carved stone was connected to some kind of a story. We don't know the true story. It might have been a tool for grinding beans, it could have been a fertility object, or even a mommy doll, like when a child wants to keep a representation of their mother close, as a child still does today with their dolls. At the Louvre, you'll find elaborate ancient Greek sculptures of Venus, where she's always portrayed as an elevated female figure. This association partly explains why they named this ancient figure Venus. They assumed it must be some kind of a goddess figure. The figure profile suggests connection to motherhood or childbearing. Perhaps it's represented in a different concept of Mother Earth. That's why we can't truly understand fully today what the story was. The fact that we don't know its true purpose is precisely the point. What we do know is that someone took a stone and transformed it, a central theme of today's lecture. This transformation reflects humanity's fundamental need to change and alter things, whether for tools or for art. This example, dating from around 30,000 BCE, demonstrates this early human impulse. The Lascaux caves in France contain cave paintings from about 15,000 to 17,000 years ago. There are many theories about their meaning. While we can objectively see that they depict animals, the stories behind them remain a mystery. Perhaps they document the local wildlife like antelope or deer. Maybe they were big fish stories, tales of impressive hunts. The paintings might have served as seasonal maps showing where animals could have been found in warm or cold weather. They could have also been educational tools showing hunting methods, where to use spears and arrows. When visiting the Lashio Caves today, bright lights illuminate these stunning walls. Recently, they introduced LED torch-lit tours that create an extraordinary effect. Since the cave walls aren't flat, they're bumpy, the moving torch lights make these paintings appear animated. Like a simple puppet show, they create images that seem to shift as shadows lengthen and shorten across the uneven surfaces. While there are many theories about the paintings' themes beyond just hunting, they were created at the cusp of the agricultural revolution. At this point, humans were purely hunters and gatherers, no concept of agriculture. The paintings might simply show the size of an animal or commemorate a memorable hunt. The truth remains a mystery. Fascinatingly, these works represent the original street art. They were essentially sprayed onto the walls. The artists hold pigment in their mouth and then use stencils, spitting or splattering the pigment onto the rock face. Rather than using a brush, they stain the walls with this technique. There's substantial evidence demonstrating this was their method. We don't know exactly who created many of these prehistoric artworks like the Venus of Willendorf, cave paintings, or even Stonehenge. The agricultural revolution began around 12,000 BCE during the transition from the Neolithic to the megalithic eras. This period saw the dawn of the Copper Age, when humans first discovered that metals could be shaped and manipulated. After learning to transform the raw materials from the earth, they progressed from softer copper to stronger bronze, an alloy of copper and tin. Later came iron, and in about 1800 BCE, they discovered that mixing iron with carbon, so coal, created an even stronger metal, steel. I want to emphasize in the use of materials from the earth how they were transformed into tools and, at the same time, artworks. Ancient Egyptian artifacts and earthen objects tell us much about their civilization. Their story encompasses religious and mythological tales with pharaohs and kings and queens, and all being immortalized in stone. Hieroglyphics mark the early stages of written language, where images document both stories and practical information. Interestingly, the first written records were often very mundane, tracking purchases of goods or noting burial locations with precise details. Rather than myths or religious texts, these early writings served primarily as a factual documentation. Egyptian hieroglyphics feature a distinctive flat structure, similar to words on a page, with figures arranged in a linear sequence. Ancient Greek art spans three main periods. The Archaic, Classical, and the Hellenistic period introduced more dramatic, figurative work. The art ranges from narrative scenes on clay pots to the dynamic Laocoon group from 200 BCE. While Homer's epic heroes and mythologies remained central themes, the artistic style evolved and became more mimetic, accurately reflecting human anatomy. The influence carried into ancient Roman art, although we're going to skip those details, with the exception of noting that the Laocoon was discovered in Rome in 1506. During the medieval times, mimetic sculptures became less common. This was an era of the Byzantine, the Ottoman, and the Romanesque art, leading up to the Gothic period, where our discussion on the creative process will begin. Stories were documented through books and pages and sculptures, often integrated with architecture. This long period extended until the Gothic or the Proto-Renaissance around 1300 CE, which marks the beginning of our story. During the Gothic period and the Proto-Renaissance, the Middle Ages, there's a question about why there are so many paintings of babies that look like old men. These images of Jesus consistently appeared to be, well, elderly-like. This phenomenon is known as the homunculus. As several theories are existing behind it, rather than depicting Jesus as a cute infant, artists chose to represent him as a fully formed human, an old man. One theory relates to the infant mortality rates of about 25% of children didn't survive past the age of 5 years old due to limited health care at that time. Artists may have depicted fully formed figures to represent hope for a child's growth and development. Parents universally want their children to grow up to be big and strong and smart and successful, like, for example, attending Stony Brook University and securing a good job. But this forward-looking mindset helps explain why so many painted babies resemble old men. Another notable aspect of the painting's flatness in this time period was similar to the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. These appeared to be figures that were stacked one upon the other. This style persisted until about 1400. Paintings were composed like text on a page, meant to be read from left to right or top to bottom. Since many people were illiterate at that time, they needed to understand the stories through images. During the Proto-Renaissance, figures were still depicted as stacked one next to the other, but Giotto had a different approach. His buildings, though initially appearing unusual, were deliberately twisted and turned and tilted. Through this technique, he created a sense of depth, not just flat space, but environments that seemed inhabitable. And it was Giotto's innovations that helped usher in what we know as the Renaissance. In early Renaissance Florence, an exciting competition took place in 1401 for a relief sculpture to adorn 2 doors of a baptistry in the city's center. It was like the Oscars of the time, a major event to determine who would be crowned with the finest artist title. This competition would decide who would create the doors for the building next to the still unfinished cathedral Santa Maria del Fiore. This smaller baptistry took a comparison alongside Giotto's bell tower, which was a prosperous aspect of the city at that time. Florence was home to the wealthy Medici family who had amassed their fortune through banking and world trade. Their wealth, along with other patrons' money flowing through the city, funded numerous projects. In this flourishing metropolis, people yearned to create beauty in all forms, from art to architecture and fashion, while fostering intellectual pursuits. That emphasis on human potential and reason was at its center. The competition ultimately came down to 2 young artists, 21-year-old Lorenzo Ghiberti and 22-year-old Filippo Brunelleschi. Ghiberti won and spent 20 years crafting the bronze doors for the baptistry of the northern portal while the cathedral remained under construction. Upon their completion, the Medici commissioned Ghiberti to create a second set of doors known as the Gates of Paradise. 25 years after the original competition, you can imagine Brunelleschi's disappointment when these doors were installed in the place of honor on the east portal facing the cathedral. Interestingly, you can see a replica of these doors on Long Island at the Trinity Lutheran Church in Hicksville. During World War II, the original doors were removed for protection against potential damage and flooding. While they were in storage, casts were made, which is how the replicas found its way to Long Island. Devastated, Brunelleschi left Florence and wandered throughout Italy. During his isolation, he began drawing the ancient Roman ruins scattered across the landscape. While sketching these ruins, he noticed something fascinating about their geometry. The standing columns had parallel lines, but when he drew the fallen columns, he observed that the farther end appeared smaller than the closer end. When he extended the seemingly parallel lines in his drawings, he discovered, well, to his surprise, that those lines converged at the horizon. This observation of distant objects appearing smaller became the foundation for what we now know as linear perspective. When Brunelleschi returned to Florence, he eagerly shared his discovery with all of his fellow artist friends. He demonstrated this finding using an innovative device, a paper with a small hole through it, which he viewed the drawings reflected in a mirror, allowing him to compare the converging lines in his drawing with what he observed in reality. Though this specific method is no longer used today, it led to our modern system of linear perspective. By 1425, the cathedral next to the baptistry still remained unfinished. The main challenge was constructing the dome. Various attempts of the building's mountains of dirt, creating scaffolding, well, they had all failed, with the structure repeatedly collapsing. In 1418, another competition was launched to complete the dome, involving yet again Brunelleschi and his old rival Ghiberti. This time, Brunelleschi won. Drawing from his extensive studies of Roman ruins and their magnificent domes, Brunelleschi devised a solution for building the cupola of the Santa Maria del Fiore. Unlike Rome's Pantheon, which used a single shell concrete form, the formula has long been forgotten for how that cement was made. The dome in Florence needed to be built with bricks. Brunelleschi's ingenious solution involved embedding iron chains within the inner dome, similar to a barrel hoop. The dome was completed in 1436 and stands today as the defining symbol of the Renaissance. Brunelleschi's newly discovered techniques of linear perspective greatly influenced other artists and remains a fundamental skill taught to art students today. The first significant use of this method appeared in Masaccio's fresco called The Holy Trinity at Florence's Santa Maria Novella. This scene achieved unprecedented realism, featuring a crucified Jesus firmly grounded to the earth while God's figure floats above, creating a revolutionary illusion of pictorial depth previously unseen in painting. Though other artists adopted this technique, the new way of depicting pictorial space took time to be fully embraced. Consider this painting, The Delivery of the Keys, located in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. While he clearly applied linear perspective to the buildings and the plaza, making distant figures seem smaller than the ones in the foreground, the figures still appeared to be stacked in rows rather than truly occupying a deep sense of space. The full development of the perspectival illusion would evolve gradually over time. Understanding mechanical principles, physical measurements, and objective observations proved crucial to the creative process and solving existing problems. Notably, this system of linear perspective predates calculus that was developed by Newton and Leibniz about 250 years later. Perspective employs geometric principles to create an illusion of depth on a flat surface through calculated angles and converging lines. The concept of lines converging at a vanishing point parallels the mathematical concepts in calculus where sequences can either be convergent, or divergent. Similarly, the principle appears in economics through what's known as diminishing returns, measuring how marginal output decreases as single production factors increase. Brunelleschi's ability to move fluidly between architecture, art, and engineering innovations exemplifies what we call a Renaissance man. His studies of ancient Roman achievements, which had largely vanished during the medieval era, also known as the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, following the fall of the Roman Empire, well, this all helped to shape the Renaissance. A notable contemporary of Brunelleschi was Alberti, whose diverse interests in architecture, art theory, and mathematics were very similar. Alberti earned recognition as a man of letters through his influential writings on art and architecture and a discipline of philosophy known as humanism. These are topics we will explore along with addressing the notable absence of women in this historical narrative.